My name is Lyle Murphy, the founder of the Alternative to Med Center, and today we're going to be talking about Paxil, specifically answering your tough questions about Paxil that no one is talking about. So, excuse me. Here is the first question. Which is better to treat anxiety, Paxil or Xanax? This really depends on how willing you are to be addicted to a drug, because Xanax is clearly much better at thwarting anxiety, but it's not something that you really, it's generally not it's a slippery slope that you don't want to go stepping on, because although it is very effective at an anxiolytic, it is also addictive to the point where you can get stuck on a medication like that, making the symptomatology far worse than it would have been in the first place. Paxil does have an effect generally to the betterment of anxiety and is a bit more sustainable. But by and large, even in a desperate state, you really shouldn't be prescribed Xanax more than a couple of weeks, because it's got a backbite, and it will almost definitely have that effect on people who take it for a longer period of time. All right, next question. Is Paxil, Zoloft, and Prozac basically the same medication? Yes and no. I mean, it's strangely enough, people have largely different reactions to what would be considered a similar medication. They're all targeting the reuptake of serotonin, but they have other sort of almost mystical properties that make them somewhat different. Now, Paxil and Zoloft have similar half-lives, which means that it takes nearly the same amount of time for that drug to clear your system, which is approximately a day for the half-life to clear Paxil or Zoloft. So that makes them slightly harder to stop than Prozac. Prozac, the half-life on Prozac can be 5 days about, and it's not this. For many people, it's not stopping the medication that it's not this. It's more the speed at which they stop it. So the sudden stop is what causes the most problems. And Prozac's much more amenable to stopping cold turkey, because it takes 5 days for it to leave your system anyway. So it's got sort of an inherent taper to it. Zoloft recently, even though they thought it was a primary serotonin drug, which it is, but Zoloft has actually a bit of a dopamine effect as well that can cause it to have a bit of a stimulatory effect. So they do have their slight differences, but I guess, taken through a very soft definition, you could say that they are essentially similar drugs. Okay, next question. Why is Prozac considered safe during pregnancy and Paxil isn't? The pregnancy questions throw me a little bit, because here at Alternative Med Center, we don't take patients who are pregnant because of the rigorous aspects of the physical detoxification program. And also, pregnancy is one of those very delicate things where you don't want to take somebody's advice over YouTube, even including mine. But Paxil is associated with a small increase in fetal heart defects, and that one is discouraged during pregnancy for that reason. I don't like any medications during pregnancy, that's me, but apparently Paxil is the one that's associated with the heart defects. Next question. Another pregnancy question. What if the pregnant woman takes Paxil and quetiapine, which is Seroquel, and cannot change the medication? In my understanding of embryology is that the fetal heart defect that would be shown by Paxil, if it were to create that, would probably be done in the first trimester. I may be wrong about that. I don't exactly know. So if you're already on Paxil and you've already gotten pregnant and you're sort of there already, you might want to ask your prescriber, like, what is the risk? If you're in your third trimester, is there still a risk? But I would sort of question the notion that you can't cross taper from Paxil over to Prozac. For most people, that's well tolerated. I don't know if you found a strategist to help you with that. You can maybe find a different doctor through the ACAM, which is the American College for the Advancement in Medicine. Type in your zip code and look for a doctor in your area that might be a bit more savvy on that. But yeah, there should be the ability to cross taper to slowly take away. And I don't know exactly how you do this in pregnancy. If you this is something you want to bring up with your prescriber. But if you took the Paxil and took away half of it and had half the Prozac in 1 week, and then switched back over to completely being on Prozac the second week, would that be acceptable? To run a conversation like that by your prescriber, because this is really for him or her to really guide you through. Is Paxil anticholinergic? Yeah, the SSRIs are typically anticholinergic, but Paxil itself is the most anticholinergic of all of the drugs, all of the SSRIs rather. And this means that, you're going to get the dry eyes, you're going to get the lack of tearing, you're going to get the constipation as side effects more with this drug than probably some of the other SSRIs. Next question, what's your work experience with Paxil patients? When somebody calls and says they're on Paxil, I usually am like, oh, they got an easy one. Because with our methods, we generally make that withdrawal look rather easy. There are horror stories out there, people trying it without supportive methods, and by and large, they're true. Some people have a rough go at this. But there certainly are antidepressants which are more complicated generally to get off of than Paxil. And, we have ways to help support people as they're going through this to build up their serotonin levels at the same time they're coming off the drugs, so they don't go into a serotonin plunge and have all the symptomatology that goes along with that can be more than unnerving. It can be unbearable. Next question. What are the effects of quitting Paxil cold turkey? Well, when you go into a serotonin plunge, usually this analogy is not the greatest for people who are on medications, but it's kind of like when somebody comes off of heroin, they were or any opiate for that matter, they were on a painkiller that was blocking pain. So their body shut off the ability to produce the endogenous enkephalins and endorphins that are the analogs for that drug. So suddenly, when they take away the drug, everything hurts. They don't have a way to mediate the pain or even the light touch to feel like light touch anymore. It feels like pain. So when you have been taking a drug that's been artificially pumping up your serotonin, probably exhausting it, truth be known long term, but when you take that drug away, suddenly being in a serotonin plunge is going to look like people can't sleep, they are sick to their stomach, they have anxiety that goes through the roof, and they have obsessive ruminating type of thoughts that they can't seem to control. Brain zaps sometimes, and not that everyone experiences that. I don't want to lay it out there that that's what you're going to get if you cold turkey your Paxil, but you generally want to try to taper these things. I mean, if you've had experiencing cold turkeying your Paxil before and it didn't affect you, then you might be fine. But if you're not exposed to what can happen here with a cold turkey, why cold turkey? Why not just do it slower and play the safe card with yourself? All right, next question. How do vyvance and Paxil differ? So both are in the, they both could be considered antidepressants, but vyvance is a stimulant, and as a stimulant, it is capable of mood elevating attributes, whereas Paxil is not a mood elevator. It's more of it builds up serotonin, and serotonin is not an antidepressant per se. It is more of a sedating, bringing down your anxiety, helping you sleep kind of neurochemical. So that's how they're different. It's sort of a disservice that SNRIs or a straight stimulant like vyvance are called antidepressants, and then Paxil and Prozac are called antidepressants because they have really, truly different mechanisms of action. Next question, what are some alternative treatments besides taking Paxil? I pulled a list from our website. If you wanted to go on to the Alternative to Meds website and pull up Paxil alternatives, there's a very robust list of different alternatives, and all of the evidence-based citations there are there to back it up, which also provide further reading for people who are really, going deep on this stuff. So one of the better treatments for treating depression is individual therapy. Different types of therapy, including DBT, EMDR, but specifically cognitive behavioral therapy. Getting with a therapist and going through some counseling is proven to be effective for helping alleviate depression, as well as any antidepressant. Exercise. If you're not moving your body, it's one way to get really metabolically stoved up. And if you're not feeling good on a physiological level, you're not going to feel good up here. They both are very intimately related. Tryptophan. Tryptophan is the direct precursor to, well, not the direct precursor, actually. Tryptophan makes 5-HTP, and then 5-HTP is a direct precursor to serotonin. So there is a nutraceutical way to build up serotonin levels. Not saying that depression is a serotonin-related disorder, but if you're having anxiety, ruminating thoughts, and inability to sleep, you may want to consider trying to up your serotonin levels nutraceutically with tryptophan. Now, conversely, if you're looking for more of a mood elevating effect, if you're looking for an antidepressant alternative that gives you a mood elevating effect, SAMe is known for its stimulating effects. It actually helps biotransform the dopamine, norepinephrine, epinephrine cycle by adding a methyl group. SAMe is literally it's got a methyl group attached to it that's sort of just dangling out there very loosely. So it donates it very freely to the catecholamine cycle that produces the perception of reward, attention, focus, and the mood elevating effects of catecholamines. Vitamin D. Vitamin D has definitely been associated, low vitamin D levels have definitely been associated with depression, particularly the seasonal affective disorder attributes, also known as SAD, quite poetically accurate as far as an acronym for SAD. And vitamin D helps with prostaglandins and all sorts of hormonal sort of things, as acts as a precursor for some of those hormonal cascades. And so supplementing with vitamin D, and vitamin D is something that's produced in our skin from sunlight. So getting out in the sun to the best of you can, even if it's just, pulling up your sleeves and letting the sun hit your arms for 15, 20 minutes, it is a way to get a dose of vitamin D. Testing for and clearing out neurotoxins in the body. This is a rather diverse subject, but just like carbon monoxide, if you're running a car in your garage, will poison your oxygen metabolism. There are poisons that poison your energy metabolism. There's hormone mimickers that poison your hormone synthesis. There's endocrine disruptors. There's all these different sort of what they call xenobiotics that poison your physiology, including your neurochemistry. Your brain is a neurochemical organ, and so therefore it is subject to profound different sensations by changing the chemical chemistry of your brain. So for instance, a very small dose of lysergic acid, LSD, can cause a very profound effect in your brain. Same thing with chemical toxicity. It doesn't take a lot sometimes to really produce a profound mental effect when we're talking about neurotoxins. A few other things here: acupuncture, dietary changes in food therapy. I mean, if we're eating sugar and we're getting that boost, and then we're getting that flat, and we're getting the boost and getting the flat, eventually the benefit of that is going to go away, and what you're going to be left with is the detriment of it. So just getting on whole, natural, organic foods and eating foods that have a protein source, and stop living off of grains, simple carbohydrates, and sugars would be ideal. There are nutritional interventions that can be done via the work of naturopathy or integrative doctors. particularly naturopaths, they can help test for nutritional deficiencies, or just go over your diet and go, hey, you could use a little more stuff here or there, or really look into your situation through lab testing. There are herbal medicines like St. John's wort that can help alleviate depression, particularly to help provide with some stimulation. There is there's not substantial research when it comes to supplements in the first place, but there is quite a robust, as far as supplements and herbs go, profile of research for St. John's wort for its effectiveness as an antidepressant, and has been in many journals called as effective as any of the antidepressants. So it is worth looking into. Yoga, getting into your body is the best way to get out of your head. And honestly, sometimes that's what your mental health systems are trying to get you to do, just to get out, get in your body, get moving, find peace and tranquility within yourself, and stop trying to consume things to try to fix it from the outside, like addictive foods, sugars, and drugs and other crap that's not good for you. Sound and music therapy. I did some research on this one recently, and I really thought about myself. I thought, anytime I turn on music, I feel better. And there is actually some evidence to support that. There was one research article I read that they even went and got really nuanced. Is it jazz? Is it classical? Is it, like what type of music? And that really is dependent on the person. If you're an East Indian, the East Indian music is going to be what gives you a sense of excitement. If you're westernized, maybe it's Madonna. If you're, from different cultures, you have a cultural type of music that can actually cause very powerful antidepressant effects. All right, next question would be, is Paxil good for stress and prescribed for it? Yeah, I would say Paxil is actually decent for stress. I mean, it depends on what your definition of stress is, but having that anxious sort of feeling, I mean, the Paxil can intervene with that. But again, there's all of the other natural interventions as well. So when somebody asks me, is it good for it? Well, taking arsenic is good at killing somebody, but I mean, these medications, are they really where you want to go with your symptomatology? So if you're looking to mask a certain symptom and are willing to endure the consequences of the adverse effects that may be associated with that drug, short-term and long-term, then I guess you consider it good. I don't consider these things to be good. I think in many ways these are a symptomatology of our just defunct viewpoints in society that, there's this quick fix, I can do this, I can do this, I can do that. And there's not, I mean, it being in your body, having an experience in this world, being willing to feel pain is part of being alive. And there are ways to work in that in nuanced ways that are just, it's a rhythm in life rather than like, I need to fix this thing so I can go on with my bad behaviors and my nutritional insufficiencies in order to prop myself up. Generally, I don't think it works. So is Paxil good for stress? Yeah, for a short period of time. But is it good for stress? No. Would Paxil be a better option for social anxiety disorder and depression? Sorry, let me read that again. Would Paxil be a better option for social anxiety disorder and depression than Prozac or Lexapro? Well, personally, I think they would all act similar in a similar way here. But Paxil is the only one of the three that is actually approved for social anxiety disorder. There are other people who use beta blockers for stage fright and for performance anxiety. So I don't necessarily like those drugs either, but it is an option for people who are really debilitated with social anxiety. I would definitely encourage on this one to work with a therapist, to work with exposure type therapy where, you just sort of incrementally work yourself into the situations that are proving to be stressful and have just, like anything else, life is an experience. Having an experience with these things that are causing the fears, and instead of having those fears eclipse your desire, or looming behind you in a way that seems to be, like stalking you, like walk with your fears in the world. Learn how to get in relationship with your fears. And those fears can actually power up your desires in certain ways. If you move with them, you can realize that, oh, that abandonment fear, me being scared of this certain thing, it's kind of like getting you, it's almost like a sensation where you're feeling something. And it's like, then you have some energy and something in a way to move it. So learning how to move those emotions rather than just annihilating them may be a more valuable option and definitely a more sustainable option for many people. Can Paxil affect short-term memory? Yes, probably more so than most because of the anticholinergic effect. Acetylcholine and norepinephrine and some of these excitatory neurotransmitters are what we use in order to to reinforce the building of memory pathways and learning experiences. So when you're impairing that, yes, it can affect learning and short-term memory. Is Paxil stronger than Lexapro? So we need less of it in the body. Well, Paxil is slightly stronger in its anticholinergic effects, and it's used to treat it's approved for a more diverse set of anxiety type symptoms, and than is Lexapro. So Paxil is actually approved for social anxiety, as we mentioned before, and it's also for panic disorders, whereas Lexapro is not specifically for those things. So I guess I would say Paxil is slightly stronger, but again, in all these, it depends on the person. It really depends on the person. They're very, very similar drugs. So the effects of it's like maybe one's a 3.5 and the other one's a 3.9 or something on a scale of 1 to 10. What is actually good about Paxil? We've been talking all this badness about Paxil. I guess. Well, for some, I guess. It's hard to say. Again, it depends on the person. But Paxil is probably one. If you're going to do a drug, would be the drug. Probably one of the primary considerations for someone who has really debilitating OCD. And again, if you're raising somebody's serotonin level and you're in a crisis and they're bent on trying to kill themselves and they can't stop those suicidal ideations or thoughts, in some people, Paxil may be an intervention, and even a worthy temporary intervention, even from my non-drugging, standpoint, to intervene in that person to try to interrupt those thoughts. And on the other hand, especially in the younger populations, Paxil has been shown to increase suicidal ideation. So it kind of depends on the person, really. And sometimes you may think you're doing a good thing by getting this person on meds, and you might be right, and other times you don't really know, and that's kind of it's certainly pronounced with meds. It even happens to some degree with supplements. Usually the supplements don't have these cataclysmic sort of adverse reactions that people can get with medications, but people can have paradoxical, meaning the opposite reaction of what you thought, to just about anything. And it certainly is very common in these drugs for it to be a bit of a I don't want to use the term Russian roulette, but sort of like a trial and error when it comes to what's actually going to happen out the other end. So, if you are doing the medication route, sometimes you start with a little, and if a little is okay, then you advance to a little bit more, so that you know that you're not going to be one of those people that's going to have something that's already debilitating you become even worse. Okay, well, that is the end of our questions. Thank you so much for listening to all of this video today. There are like and share buttons found on the YouTube here. If you're inclined to want to share this video, please do. And if there are questions that I didn't get around to or that you feel that you'd like to have answered, you can always go on to the to the website, type in the search bar drug name and then alternatives. You'll probably find a page that really gets deep into it, or you can call our admission staff at 1-800-301-3753 and ask more questions. Thank you and have a good day or evening.